Umoja is the message. Got to get the message to our brothers and sisters. Umoja is the message. I'll call for unity.
Harold Emmanuel Charles III was born June 5, 1934, to the union of Reverend Harold E. Charles and Oretha K. Charles in Greenville, South Carolina. He was their only son. In 1955, he received a B.S. degree in biology, his M.E.D., Master of Education, Teaching of Science from Chicago Teachers College, and an advanced certificate in administration and curriculum from the University of Chicago. Additionally, he received certificates of achievement from Howard University in African Affairs and postgraduate work in inner city studies education from Northeastern Illinois University. He served in the U.S. Army as a first lieutenant. Harold was united in holy matrimony to Mary Ann Mason in December of 1956 in Lexington, Kentucky. In 1958, he and his family moved to Chicago, where he joined and became an active member of Woodlawn AME Church. He began a career in research biochemistry, but changed to become a teacher after attending the March on Washington. Harold taught, Hannibal taught, for over 30 years at Farragut High School and 8 years teaching at Northeastern Illinois University. He taught at all levels from preschool, GED to graduate school. He became a nationally acclaimed educator with over 50 awards, 3 national awards, and the coveted Star Award from the National Science Teachers Association. In 1968, he left the Illinois National Guard as captain to become a committed community activist, leading the Black Teachers Association and a successful community control movement. Using the Farragut Black Manifesto as a model, he later in 1972 co-founded the Shule Yawatoto School for Children, an independent community institution on Chicago's west side, and took the name Baba Hannibal Tirus Afrik. This institution succeeded for 31 years through self-alliance. After moving to Mississippi in 1999, he joined St. Peter AME Church in Port Gibson, Mississippi. He served as a driver transporting children to various church activities. In 2004, he organized the Community Youth Achievers, CYA, in Hermanville, Mississippi. He established the Environmental Village Campus as a prototype of a sustainable community. This young institution is the most unique African-American tourist attraction in Mississippi. With a 5-acre homestead, CYA provides urban and rural survival training through the Outdoor Leadership Skills Project Southern Region. Baba Hannibal Afrik was preceded by his parents, his wife Marini, Marianne, and his sisters Faith and Hope, who joined the ancestors before him. A reflection on the life of an icon, Baba Hannibal Tirus Afrik, also known as Harold E. Charles III.
No complaints and no regrets. I do believe in chasing dreams and placing bets, but I have learned that all you give is all you get. So give it all you've got. I've had my share. I drank my fill, and even though I'm satisfied, I'm hungry still to see what's down another road beyond the hill, and do it all again. So here's to life, and every joy it brings. Here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. It's funny how the time just flies, how love can go from warm hellos to sad goodbyes and leave you with the memories you memorized just to keep your winters warm. For there's no yes in yesterday, and who knows what tomorrow brings or takes away. As long as I'm still in the game, I'm gonna play for laughs, for life, for love. So here's to life and every joy it brings. Here's to life, to dreamers and their dreams. May all your storms be weathered, and all that's good get better, better. Here's to life, here's to love. Here's to you. Baba Hannibal, Ashe.
And I believe that's a Shirley Horn arrangement, if not a song that was written by her. But of course, Joan Collaso and Maggie Brown were part of the benefit at Malcolm X College that was held in April of this year for Baba Hannibal and Brother Okoro, Harold Johnson. And they are here today to help us pay tribute to Baba Hannibal Tirus Afrik.
I had the honor of having my name and a particular song put in the instructions that Baba Hannibal wanted for his memorial service. He asked that I be there to sing Everything Must Change. I'm inspired today to sing a song that's by my father, Oscar Brown Jr. His lyric reminds me of the kind of strength and the kind of advice that Baba Hannibal Afrik would give to us all. Forgive me if I seem to preach, but there is something that I want to say, a message that I hope will reach the people who are throwing life away. Call it my philosophy, and that is why I pass it on to you, 'cause it works so well for me and help me get away from strife. Hope you listen carefully. They say the truth will make you free, and that's the way you want to be, 'cause brother, this is your life. Now, long as you're living, you better remember, time you are spending comes to an ending. While you are sleeping, lifetime is creeping. Wake up and taste it, be foolish to waste it. Sample and savor all of life's flavor, long as you're living your life. Now, long as you're living, you better remember, folks who are lazy are playing crazy. You gotta keep moving, keep on improving. You won't be hurried after you're buried. Live every minute, put yourself in it, long as you're living your life. Long as you're living, you better remember, you'll never beat life. Don't try to cheat life. All men are brothers. Do unto others. Love's for enjoying, hate's for destroying. Never forget it, or you'll regret it, long as you're living your life. Forgive me if I seem to preach, but there is something that I want to say, a message that I hope will reach people who are throwing life away. Call it my philosophy, and that is why I pass it on to you, 'cause it works so well for me and help me get away from strife. Hope you listen carefully. They say the truth will make you free, and that's the way you want to be, 'cause sister, this is your life.
Not only was Maggie left instructions to perform at the services for Hannibal Afrik, but she was left instructions by her father to grow up to be the young woman that she has grown up to be. Both Maggie Brown and Joan Collaso were especially invited to join us in this tribute because they are the children of icons. So to pay tribute to an icon requires something with the quality of icons, and they have it in their DNA. I'm very happy that both of them consented to come to present something to you in memory of Brother Hannibal Tirus Afrik. And now I have another child of an icon. Useni Eugene Perkins is the son of an icon, a most famous artist, a most famous sculptor, Marion Perkins, about whom we know a lot, but not nearly as much as could be known. And we might get a chance to say something about your father, Useni. But in the meantime, I know that you wrote a tribute to Hannibal. So if you would be so kind as to share that with the viewing audience, we would appreciate that.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on this special program, dedication to Baba Hannibal. This tribute is called "He is Now Among the Tallest Trees." a memorial tribute to Baba Hannibal Afrik Tirus, a.k.a. Harold Childs. The ancestral vineyard of Black liberation is adorned with monumental trees that are epic in stature and represent epochs of struggle as sterling examples of self-determination, resistance, and perseverance. For generations to learn, for generations to follow, for generations yet born. Baba Hannibal now stands with these legendary trees and is among the tallest, for he left us calabashes of wisdom and love and an unfailing commitment to remain steadfast and resilient, regardless of the tentacles of white supremacy that contaminate our communities with deception, greed, and oppression. His ebony roots have now intertwined with the military genius of his namesake, General Hannibal, and the resolve of Queen Nzinga, the majestic statue of Esquia the Great, the courage of Queen Antisiwa, the scholarship of W.B. Du Bois, the oratorical gift of Frederick Douglass, the brilliance of Carter G. Woodson, the audacity of Ida B. Wells, the vision of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the fearless leadership of Nat Turner, the struggles of Louverture, Dessalines, and Christopher, the indomitable spirit of Malcolm X, the educational commitment of Merritt McLeod Bethune, the spirituality of Dr. Martin Luther King, the uncompromising voice of Paul Robeson, the united spirit of Kwame Nkrumah, the sacrifice of Patrice Lumumba, the consciousness of Steve Biko, the humble tenacity of Fannie Lou Hamer, the intellect of Dr. Jacob Carruthers. He now stands among the tallest trees, and the ancestral vineyard of Black liberation is stronger. But we must continue to nourish it, for the struggle for Black liberation continues, and those of us who aspire to follow his example need only go to the ancestral vineyard of Black liberation and cultivate our mind, body, and soul with the boundless courage, wisdom, and love he unselfishly and valiantly left us. Pamoja Tushinde, together we will rise. Your dear brother in struggle.
Useni Eugene Perkins. Very wonderful of you. You always rise to the occasion every single time. You have been doing that for many, many years. And I talk about you more often than I talk to you. When I had your niece, Marion Perkins, as a guest, Attorney Marion Perkins, as a guest on my show, I told her about you in case there were some things I wanted her to know about you. Because you are so many things. You know, you are an author, you're a playwright, you're a poet, you're a community activist, you are certainly an advocate of young people, having edited the Black Child Journal. And I don't know if I know enough about you to tell the audience just who you are, but perhaps you can tell them about your interest in the Shule and about the kinds of things that you and Hannibal had in common. So talk to me about that.
Okay. I was surprised. I didn't know that you worked at Harrison High School.
I did.
Because in a way, we have to look at Harrison High School. My first contact with Brother Hannibal was in the early 60s when I was at Better Boys Foundation Family Center on the west side. And Hannibal was at Farragut. But you had a serious problem at Harrison High School.
Exactly.
And I think the principal, correct me if I'm wrong, was transferred to Farragut, but he had done a very poor job at Harrison. And you had this tension between the Hispanic community and the black community, unfortunately. So that's when I first met Brother Hannibal. I don't know exactly when, because his presence is so overwhelming. But I do know that we were both interested in kids, children. So we had a common bond right at the beginning. And a lot of people, well, I did listen to the first segment, and they mentioned Hannibal's tireless commitment and involvement with the parents in Lawndale. He may have started the first parent community-based organization that addressed its concerns to improve the public schools. It could have been the first, because they used to meet at Better Boys Foundation. Ida Mae Fletcher, the Concerned Parents of Lawndale, that was the group that he helped to start. And as you know, on the west side, you also had Nancy Jefferson, she was starting the group, and Marion Stamps and Cabrini Greens. So this idea today I hear about community control of schools, parental involvement, Brother Hannibal was doing that in the early 60s. And these sisters were committed and very much involved in the whole educational process. So I think his may have been the first in this city, maybe the country. Another thing that Brother Hannibal was very much involved with, what do we do with these so-called kids that do not function too well in the traditional educational setting? We're facing that problem today. Anytime you got about, 5 or 6 out of 10 kids dropping out of school, I mean, that's very serious. So he and Joe Rosen, who was the superintendent, a white man, very much concerned about black students, began the Farragut Outpost at Better Boys Foundation. That may have been the first alternative school for kids that could not adjust to the traditional school setting. And of course, Brother Hannibal was teaching at Farragut, but I think he had something to do with getting rid of the principal that was at Harrison School. They transferred that principal to Farragut, and he was incompetent at Harrison, so naturally he's going to be incompetent at Farragut. And I think that Brother Hannibal was one of the organizers to get this incompetent principal removed, because he was not serving the interests of the students, and he was not relating to these parents. Ida Mae Fletcher, she was like Fannie Lou Hamer, strong, powerful woman. And so Hannibal and I, we just connected with so many things because we shared a common concern. Now, the Shule, I don't know if it was mentioned, first got started at LPPAC. That was the first place that hosted the Shule Yawatoto. LPPAC is Lawndale People's Planning Association, Action Committee. And then when they had to depart from that venue, I think he had a building on Central Park, a 2-flat. I think it was like a 2-flat, and they were there for about a couple years, and for some reason something happened where he had to relocate. And so for about a year at Better Boys Foundation, we allowed the Shule to come into our facility to use the first floor, and so he could carry on the educational commitment that he had made before he was given the Catholic school, which you mentioned. And that school was a wreck at the beginning. They just gave that away. They didn't give him any money to restore it or to do anything, but it did give Brother Hannibal a place where he could then begin to carry out some of the programs, activities that he had been thinking about for a long time. I would go over there as often as possible to help them. Baba Hannibal was such a major force in Lawndale on the west side of Chicago. Of course, beyond that, but that's where he and I first would coalesce, do a lot of things, and just support each other, because it was mainly about these kids, about these children. Because as you recall, the Willis wagons were in existence then.
Yes.
You know, putting out schools in these trailers and everything. And, you know, things haven't changed too much. I remember with Barbara Sizemore, her book, Walking in Circles. That's what we're doing. That was the early 60s, and we're facing some of the same problems today.
Well, here's the early 60s that you were alluding to, and here's some more of that. I was at Harrison High School. The students at Harrison High School walked out because they were demanding a quality education. The principal had the students arrested for boycotting classes. And of course, now this meant that they had to come to court, they needed lawyers and all of this kind of stuff. Well, the teachers were just enraged that the children should be arrested for trying to get an education, which was the most ridiculous thing you could ever imagine. So there was a rally that was in part sponsored by Breadbasket, Operation Breadbasket, and Barbara Sizemore spoke at this rally. And of course, everybody was ready to contribute money to get legal assistance for these children and to do whatever, you know, turn the school system upside down. Well, somehow that movement got sidetracked, and after a while you saw people getting peeled off little by little, I don't know, through intimidation or through the length of the struggle, because a struggle is not a march. A struggle is an ongoing process. You don't just show up somewhere and make a lot of noise and go back home. You have to keep showing up if you're doing something called struggle. So that kind of fizzled out. But just prior to that, I had lived in public housing. Gus Savage lived in the same public housing. What we were doing was we were going to change the school, because you mentioned this, the Willis wagons.
Yes.
The most atrocious situation existed in our communities, where you had not double shifts of children going to school from 8 to 12 and 12 to 4, but you had triple shifts where children were going, there was a middle shift. You had every room in the school building in our particular community occupied, including a broom closet that was used for storing the janitorial supplies. That our schools were just bursting at the seams and had all of these trailers sitting on the playground where the children should have their outdoor exercise and activities, so that they could keep from crossing a line on a sheet of paper called a school boundary. So there were schools on the other side of the street in a predominantly white community that had empty classrooms, but our children could not cross the street. So we took it to, first of all, to the district superintendent. And the district superintendent, well, first we took it to the principal, and the principal, of course, tried to tell us that what we were saying was not the case. So we, understanding that we had to go through the channel, so we went next to the district superintendent. And then following the district superintendent, we showed up at Benjamin Willis's office, because we intended to have something done about the situation of overcrowding. And obviously, how can children learn if they are being given, you know, just nuggets of things, you know, just a truncated school day, you know, just chopped up. And some of your children, if you had, at that time, I think I may have had 6 children. And so some of my children went to school in the mornings, and some went in the afternoons, and some went in. So you're trying to take your children to school, bring some children home from school, take some other children back to school. These are all young school-age children. You don't want to leave them unattended. So it was just unacceptable, that whole thing. So On the west side, we were doing all that kind of stuff. In the meantime, we were also trying to do something about the political control of the community with all of these precinct captains who lived in western suburbs, but who were precinct captains and ward committeemen and alder people and everything else in the community with all the patronage and everything. You named it in your book, Home is a Dirty Street. We did not know what to call where we were. Useni said it's a ghetto colony, and he coined the term get colony, which meant a community, an impoverished community that is controlled externally. And so we were fighting against that, and we had all kinds of issues trying to fight that. In the meantime, Hannibal is fighting the same fight. But he's taken it a step further. What he has done now is he has not reconciled with the public schools, but he has decided that he needed to provide an alternative to that, run a parallel situation for our children, because the public schools is, that's a whole nother animal, and it may take forever. By the time you get something straight in the public schools, your children will be grown up. And your own personal children will not need the changes that you're making. So this 60s that you're referring to was that period, period of time when we were black and proud, where we understood some things, where we understood that we were under the heel of domination, and that nothing was going to change if we didn't change it ourselves. And risk had to be taken, and the struggle had to be waged. Somewhere along the lines, I think they convinced some of us that the struggle had ended, and that we had arrived, and that we had no further need to struggle, because now we're able to do things like move out of the projects and buy a house, put a down payment on a house. Now we're able to get off the CTA and buy a car. Now people are able to get employed. I know some of the people in the organizations that I was in started dropping off because they got patronage jobs. I looked up one day, somebody was a crossing guard on the corner, somebody else was in Chicago Housing Authority. You couldn't live there and work for them and fight them. So all they did was hire a bunch of our key people. And you looked up and folks was working for the CHA, and they could no longer struggle. So I think Hannibal had to be aware of the fact that our struggle was undermined by all of this, buying off people and distracting people and making people feel as though there was no further need to struggle. That the public schools, now that they built a nice new building at Roosevelt and Homan, no, that's California. They built a nice new school at California and Roosevelt Road, a big new school. The control was not given, but they at least relieved the overcrowding. So they did some cosmetic things to make some of us feel that we had won. But we had not won because Hannibal was fighting for the critical thing, which was community control.
Right. That's right.
So if the community is not going to control the schools, I will love you forever if you never write another word for the book, Home is a Dirty Street, The Social Oppression of Black Children. And I said, how could anybody read the title of this book? How could anybody read the subtitle of this book that says, The Social Oppression of Black Children? How could we know that black children were being socially oppressed and not be up in arms and enraged and busy doing something about that? But what was the impetus for that book? Because you saw it clearly. You saw the problem.
Well, I was working on the West Side at Better Boys Foundation, and it was something that I saw directly, that the kids coming to our agency, we had a very effective program at Better Boys Foundation. But then a lot of our kids were getting in trouble. And I began to understand that there was another influence that had more influence than what we were providing at Better Boys Foundation.
That's when you named
And
the
that
street
was the
institution.
streets.
Street institution.
And then I recall when I was growing up in Ida B. Wells, I come out of public housing, in Ida B. Wells, and young people spend so much time in the streets. And we know what's happening today. And they talking about the early curfew. I don't think that's going to do anything. Kids going to be out because the streets have played such a major role in the socialization of young people, unfortunately. And so that's what I was trying to, from an empirical perspective, to capture that situation. I would be out in the streets with kids, and who they were relating to, and so it was an empirical experience that I went through, and the West Side of Chicago is very interesting, as you know. I mean,
I lived on the West Side.
yes, that's what I said. As you know, you had so much happening on the West Side. The West Side Organization, the Garfield Organization, the Black Hand Society, and some of the gangs, specifically the Vice Lords and then the conservative Vice Lords, the Egyptian Cobras. I was involved with most of these organizations to some extent. And so institutions were failing our kids. And I've come to, well, not to accept, but to understand that institutional racism, many of us, we talk about it, but we still don't really understand it, because the only way you're going to really nullify institutional racism is by having your own institutions that you control. Now, Baba Hannibal understood that. He knew that, well, yes, he's going to do everything possible, which he did, to organize parents and to improve public schools, because we're paying taxes. We should have input in institutions that we're helping to build. But at the same time, he always knew that the destiny of our people could not be left with the education the public schools were providing us. He knew that. And so Shule Yawatoto was an alternative, and he worked diligently in trying to improve that. I heard your first segment, and you're right. A lot of people used to tell Baba Hannibal, oh, you're doing a great job, it's just wonderful and everything. But they were not really putting any monies into that school. That's why it just kept deteriorating. I don't think that he got the support, literally, that the school needed in terms of people volunteering. But yet, they would always say, well, Baba Hannibal, you're doing such a good job. I appreciated many of the remarks that you were making, because sometimes we give lip service, and but Baba Hannibal was one of the most humble people. He was a hero to me. I always loved the brother. I always had a deep affection for him, and so because of his commitment, and I wish I had the commitment that he had, because I would go astray sometimes, I guess, you know. But he was just a total person that what he spoke, he tried to exemplify in his behavior.
And he did that.
Yes.
Which is why Rasheed always comes up with the right thing to do culturally. He always, I think you're ahead of your time. I really do. I think that, you know, at some point we're going to be thinking that we should have done what you were suggesting to to a greater degree, because you have great ideas, you have wonderful ideas, and you put a lot of effort toward bringing your ideas into fruition. You know, I looked at what you did. I mean, I think I don't know how far back it goes, but it goes back a long way when you and your wife, before she passed away, when you came here and you brought a whole, one of my earliest shows was with your wife and some of the other people. You all had done a theatrical piece, and you great, I'm just so grateful to you that you brought it here and let me, you know, have it as one of the shows that I had. But you always knew that there needs to be stimulation, that there needs to be inspiration, you know, that left to our own devices, we will just sit somewhere and vegetate. But somebody needs to stir us up every once in a while and say, come over here and see this, or come over here and do this. And you have a track record of doing that. I think the show that you did with the black ice skaters, you know, I mean, who knew we could do that? And we need that kind of thing with the Baba Hannibals of the world and the Usenis of the world. We need somebody to show us excellence. We need to be exposed to it and see the things that we can do, you know, because I don't think, if we don't flex our muscles every once in a while, we won't know we have any. So at some point you have to challenge yourself. You have to do something that is not just, say, the run-of-the-mill thing. And somehow, I think probably Baba Hannibal has rubbed off on all of us, because I know that I've always been proud of your work, and of course his work.
Of course. And it's easy a lot of time when you have examples. Useni and Baba were examples. We talk about gangs and things that's leaving this community and the people just mesmerized as to what to do. But Useni had wrote a book about gangs. I don't know if that may have been the first book that was even written. Some in-depth, informative, common sense approach how gangs come into fruition, how they should be dealt with. He was talking about that years ago on the west side of Chicago. People don't know about his work at the Better Business Boys. I've learned so much just sitting right here now about history, back to it being documented. If we could have documented all the history that y'all just shared about Farragut, Harrison, I went to Crane, all that history, a lot of the teachers today could benefit of how to approach the horrible conditions that exist in our school system today. If they had this. Now, they ain't documented. Hopefully the masses will get a chance. We'll see your show as it airs, and they will begin to learn this history. We have to document what we're doing and pass it down. But like Baba Hannibal said, we got to create our own institutions.
Absolutely.
Yes. That the book on gangs, that's obsolete now, because the gang situation today is entirely different from what I described in the explosion of Chicago's black street gangs, unfortunately. I don't understand it. I still come in contact with a lot of former gang members. But
the fact that you took the time to try to understand it. See, we can't just throw up our hands and say, I don't understand it. We have to try to understand our condition. We have to be very realistic about our condition, and our condition is not the condition of a middle class and a lower class and an underclass. As black people, we all share the same condition, and it does not matter about the trinkets that you might be able to make use of. We all share the same condition, and that condition is a condition in which we have too little control over what the major decisions that determine our lives on a daily basis and our destiny. You know, this is very un-Garvey-like living that we're doing. You know, we are not looking in terms of just this payday and next holiday, and we're not looking in terms of what is out here in the future for our young people. So let's get some shoelace. Let's do some educating. When our children come out of school, where will they work? Because obviously we are going to have something, we're going to have some kind of revenue to meet our needs. Young people need revenue right now because they're having all kind of trinkets dangled before them. Every day they look on television, there's some new gadget that you gotta have because it has this app or that app and so forth and so on. So you've gotta have the gym shoes, you've gotta have the eye this and the eye that. You've gotta wear these kinds of things. You gotta be at the concert. There are so many things that if you or anybody, you're supposed to partake.
Mm-hmm.
The problem here is, where does that lead us in the future? What kind of future does that lead us to? Are we going to continue to be consumers forever? Is that what we intend? Baba Hannibal was not trying to raise a generation of dependent people, which is why he had the shoelay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He was trying to be a producer, not a consumer. We go to the school, consume their brand of education. He was producing his own product.
I'm sorry I never did get to his place in Jackson, Mississippi. I spoke to him a couple of times, and I think a couple of years ago I was planning on going and something else came up because I think he was trying to, he was enterprising there.
He was doing it.
Selling items and doing all kinds of things
But
that
think
would
about
generate
this, a sustainable community. We're talking green everywhere.
Right.
He's talking about not just how people can go to school and get a good job and make a living, but he's talking about how to live in a way that is sustainable, where you are not dependent on so many things over which you have no control. He took community control to its ultimate,
And
to
that's
its
right. He was putting
ultimate
so much emphasis
conclusion.
on that sovereign revolution. That we should understand that we should have total control of our own institutions. And I remember when Baba started letting me utilize the shoelace to start working. But where did I get it from? I had a model. I had Useni, I had Okura, we had Val Ward, you had Abinah, was out here. The arts is a powerful, powerful tool.
Absolutely.
That's why they try to extract it up out of the schools right now. And it's a proven fact, when children get involved with the arts, they excel in academia. So if they take that away, how much damage are you controlling? And this was a form that they could have an outlet economically, because they can go into the arts and begin to make money. When you look at Joan was singing today, you look at Maggie, that's a business they got that provides economics.
I'm glad you mentioned arts. Maybe at another program we need to talk about the arts, because you got more talented writers today, musicians in every genre. What is lacking is the consciousness, and I'll say that. They don't have the consciousness. Some of them do, a few. But during the Black Arts Movement, and we need to talk about that sometime,
Okay.
we may not have had the talent that some of the young spoken word artists, some of the artists from the hip hop, for them to create words and languages and images the way they do is fantastic.
Oh, yes.
But I think what is lacking is the level of consciousness. During the Black Arts Movement, we had the level of consciousness, and some of our works were poorly written, but the consciousness is what we had, and I don't see that today. And I come in contact with a lot of talented young people, gifted young people, especially in the area of literature that write very well. But what are they writing about? How can you write about the black experience today without dealing with some of the social issues and political issues that we're facing? I just don't see how you can do it.
Because we're what Attorney Thomas and Todd calls hydroponic. Hydroponic meaning that you are growing not in soil, but you're growing in water. We are, when you remove a people from their culture or their culture from them, you have destroyed the roots that will grow them into whole people. And so what you get is some apparition, something that looks like lettuce, you know, but it doesn't have the nutritional value of the same plant when it is grown in fertile soil. We do not have the fertile soil of our culture, and it's amazing that there's any consciousness left at all. During the Black Arts Movement, your writing mattered less than what you were expressing.
Yes.
You know, there had to be a purpose. You were not writing poetry. This was not roses are red, violets is blue time. Black people were struggling and dying. Nobody wanted to hear you come and talk about those kind of things. They wanted to hear you express the things that we needed to hear that would lead toward our liberation. We knew we were oppressed. We wanted to have some discussion of freedom and liberation and sovereignty, you know, and nationhood and self-reliance and do for self. We wanted, those were the kind of messages we listened for. And if you weren't bringing that message, if you were somewhere, you know, playing a violin or something, we weren't that much interested in the message. So, but our artists are not, they're not actually dependent upon us. You know, they can make a rap song and they can call all the women all the names, you know, and they can denounce everything that's holy and sacred among us, and they become millionaires for doing it. You know, they can endorse all the toxic beverages that will actually kill our young people, and they just simply get another contract to do something else. So that our people are being rewarded in some cases for betraying our interests because they don't know that they're part of us.
Claude Spivey was formerly with the Funkadelics, Parliament Funkadelics, has a group, him and his wife Dina, called Rhythm and Blues and Funk Foundation, that we have teamed up with. It's over 3,000 famous artists. Kool and the Gang is a part of it, and we're now all working together because they'll try to get portions of their royalties that they was beat out of. But what they're focusing on now, the new movement they want to start, a conscious music. They want to have control of the copyrights control and of all their masters that they make. But we're tying this into an economic adventure where the audience will be financially rewarded. So the only thing they're doing is redirecting advertising dollars instead of paying radio, TV, and newspaper. People who go out and tell people about shows, we all do this all the time. Why not reward the audience? I would have to pay Sun Time, I would have to pay VON, V103, or anybody else. So if you're bringing people to the show, why don't I reward you? For if I rewarded you, you would tell even more people. Well, everybody gets paid out the arts industry, which is a multi-6 trillion dollar industry, but the most important people is the audience.
I have to terminate this conversation. I really wish I didn't, because I have two housekeeping things to do. One is to make the audience aware that the music that we began with and will end with is by sax preacher, Darrell Wilson, Minister Raheem. That is his voice at the beginning and his amazing grace at the end. And Joan Collaso, who was with us also today, has a new CD out. It's called My Favorite Things. And Maggie Brown also. We need to support the people who support us. Normally I don't try to do anything commercial, and I'm not doing anything other than saying that those people who bring value to our community must be supported. We cannot allow them to live, you know, any kind of way without our support, because if we don't take care of them and they have to be taken care of by someone outside the community, we might have a different situation.
I'd just like to make one comment, because you mentioned it at the first segment. We need to keep in touch with each other, and especially our elders that have done so much. I'm thinking about Wally Sadiq, Lou House.
Mm-hmm.
Went to his funeral. I think it was last year.
Really?
Gee, I hope Wally Sadiq made his transition. How many of us were there?
I didn't know it.
Very few.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Wally Sadiq, you know,
I
a.k.a.
remember
Lou
him.
House.
Okay.
He did so much in the whole area of medical scholarships for blacks, and he was in the vineyard struggling. And I don't think many of us acknowledge him.
Well, I want to thank you,
Afterwards.
Useni Eugene Perkins and Rasheed Akbar, for being my guests on this Reflections on the Life of an Icon, Baba
Yes.
Hannibal Tirus Afrik, also known as Harold E. Charles. And now I end this program with Amazing Grace by Sax Preacher.